Einstein's sentiments today would declare him to be an anti-Zionist, for the record, because his understanding was that, like, yeah, there should be a state there where Palestinians and the Jews can live side by side with the same exact rights. His perspective on this was literally identical to mine, pretty much. Israel's becoming a fascist state is the thing that we're going to watch now. From Double Down News. This is from a year ago, from February 27, 2023. Let's take a look at what they had to say. Wait, this is before October 7. How did they know?
Walking into fascism. And it is not and should not be controversial to say so. The question that raises itself is whether Israel has a Jewish supremacy problem. We've always spoken about Jewish self-determination in the context of the State of Israel. But we are now at the point where Jewish supremacy in the State of Israel is determining the nature and functioning of the Israeli state. Former Prime Minister Ehud Barak has said this government shows signs of fascism. The mayor of Tel Aviv has warned that Israel is headed towards a fascist theocracy. And Israel's leading newspaper is publishing editorials expressing concern about what they've...
It is pretty funny to think about because this is pre-October 7. Like, literally all of the people that were saying Israel's, bouldering towards fascism are now on, like, unconditional dick riders of said fascism. And they always were, to be fair. Like, they were just like looking for one thing to tilt them permanently in that direction even further than they were.
Israel sleepwalking into Jewish fascism. It's official now. Fascism is us. So let's take a closer look at some of the people who constitute this new Israeli government. Bezalel Smotrich of religious Zionism is the finance minister and minister in the defense ministry who lives in an illegal settlement. Smotrich is a notorious racist and a Jewish ultranationalist. He describes himself quite proudly as a fascist homophobe. Then there's Ben Gvir of Jewish Power, previously convicted in Israel of incitement to racism and supporting a terrorist organization. Ben Gvir lives in an illegal settlement in Hebron. Ben Gvir's mentor, Rabbi Meir Kahane, established the Kach movement.
This is our country, it is not theirs. I want the Arabs out.
They must go. That is the message. They must go.
American, by the way. Once again, we can't just, nice American accent. Bro, he's American. What the do you mean? One of the most racist Jewish supremacist movements is literally an American dude from Long Island or some shit, okay? No, that's like straight up.
He was committed to the use of specifically Jewish violence.
From Brooklyn.
To effect such changes.
If I were the Minister of Defense, there wouldn't be one Arab left here.
I want the Arabs out, out, out.
Are you encouraging your people to go out on the streets and to attack Arabs as has happened in...
I call upon the Jews to do anything imaginable and anything possible which will encourage the Arabs to get out of this country.
Does that mean attacking?
Anything possible.
I want the out alive, and if not alive, dead.
Kahane's views were so...
I want to point something really funny, but some of you have already noticed it, but he himself, I don't know Meir Kahane's like ethnic background, but I think he's Arab too. Like, I believe he's is he a Mizrahi or a Sephardic? Because I don't think he's Ashkenazi. Just something to think about. By the way, he literally was designated as a terrorist by the American state and the Israeli state. Think about how unhinged you are. Think about how unimaginably unhinged you must be that the Israeli government is like, yeah, dog, I feel like you're a little bit too racist for us. Yeah, Biden removed him in 2021, I think, from the terror watch list. Shouts out to Biden for that one. That was pretty sick. It's great stuff. He's Polish, Latvian. Bro looks like the most Arab uncle you've ever seen. It's also pretty funny because a lot of Kahanis are also, of course, Mizrahi and Sephardic. Like, literally, they're like Ben Gvir, for example, that they're talking about right here is from Iraq, which means that they have Arab origin. He's Ashkenazi. His ancestry dates back to the 17th century in Ukraine. That's crazy because he literally looks like he could be one of Saddam's body doubles. Regardless, though, Ben Gvir is you're so racist. That one Iranian dude, shut the fuck up, bitch. No, don't come at me at the top of the hour and be like, you're so racist. Why? Because you're serving ads to everyone at the top of the hour. There you go. Ben Gvir is actually Kurdish. I know. He's of Iraqi descent, of Iraqi origin. Anyway, here's a 3-minute ad break now.
So extreme that the US classified Kach as a terrorist organization in 1997. And Kahani was the inspiration for Baruch Goldstein, another settler from the Hebron settlements who murdered over 20 innocent Palestinians in cold blood.
Goldstein's portrait still hangs in Hebron, on the wall of Itamar Ben Gvir.
אמירה מאוד מאוד מפורשת. כשהבן שלך בא ושאל אותך, מי זה אבא? מי זה האיש הזה שם בתמונה? שהוא צדיק, אני פשוט גיבור, אני אומר...
Ben Gvir is now in charge of the police in the occupied territories. Orit Strock of the Religious Zionism Party is the National Missions Minister. She is yet another leading member of the settler community in Hebron. She said doctors shouldn't be required to treat patients when it contradicts their religious beliefs. This is like a cabinet going back to the Dark Ages, a government of settlers. Settlers who live on illegal settlements across the occupied Palestinian territories. And it is explicit government policy that Greater Israel, which includes the Palestinian territories, belong to Jewish Israelis. The idea of Palestinian territories, of a Palestinian homeland, is total anathema to this Israeli government. As early as 1948, some of the world's greatest Jewish thinkers were already asking questions about Israel and the specter of fascism. In a letter written by Albert Einstein, Hannah Arendt, author of the...
I'm sick and tired of these Hamas supporters, bro. You know what I mean? Just classic. Iraqis are not all Arabs, bro. Dude, I know, man. I know. Kurds, Assyrians, Yazidis, Turkmens. That's why I said he's from Iraq. He is of Iraqi descent. Okay? When you live in Iraq for a very long time, or when you live in Turkey for a very long time, if your family has lived in what is now known as Turkey, okay? Then yeah, you're gonna have some Arab in you, okay? Just as I do. And vice versa, we're Kurdish as well. The point is, he does not see himself as a specifically as a person with like Iraq ethnic heritage, as a person with like Kurdish background, what you would consider Arab, okay? What Israelis would consider Arab.
The extraordinary...
I hate the annoying shit that people do where it's like, we're not Arab. Like, we get it, dude. I know Kurds are a different ethnic group than Arabs. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. You're missing the forest for the trees, okay? The moment we start talking about this, everybody turns into like Turkish ethno-nationalists for a second. It's so funny. It's like some shit I've dealt with my entire goddamn life. Like you literally sound like the Phoenician Lebanese population that's like, no, you don't understand. We're Christian, okay? And we're not Arab. We're different. It's like, okay, dude, sure. I'm sure the Israeli bombs that fall on you will consider you to be different ethnically.
Book, The Origins of Totalitarianism, and 26 other prominent Jewish intellectuals in the New York Times on the 2nd of December 1948, they describe Menachem Begin's political party Herut as a political party closely akin in its organization, methods, political philosophy, and social appeal to the Nazi and fascist parties. A party that preached an admixture of ultranationalism, religious mysticism, and racial superiority. The letter specifically warned, today they speak of freedom, democracy, whereas until recently they openly preached the doctrine of the fascist state. It is in its actions that the terrorist party betrays its real character. From its past actions, we can judge what it may be expected to do in the future. Herut was the main right-wing party in Israel from 1948 until 1973, when it merged with other right-wing parties to create Likud. In 1993, Benjamin Netanyahu became leader of Likud. As Likud leader, Benjamin Netanyahu demonized the then Israeli Prime Minister and Labour Party leader Yitzhak Rabin for signing the Oslo Peace Accords. In 1995, Ben Gvir...
Okay, to be fair, Israel really hasn't changed, because back then they were saying Yitzhak Rabin is a Nazi or a dog to the Arabs. Like, obviously Hamas didn't really exist or wasn't really like a notable political entity in the Palestinian resistance. So it wasn't like, oh, they're Hamas, but they were doing the same shit. It is pretty funny to think about. Like, they've been one note for 75 years.
The Minister for National Security, responsible for the police today, appeared on television brandishing an ornament stolen from Rabin's car and proudly declared, we got to his car, we'll get to him
next.
סמל הוא סמל, ומסמל שכמו שאנחנו הגענו לסמל הזה, אנחנו יכולים להגיע לרבין. אפשר לתקוף את המכוניתו של ראש הממשלה, אפשר לתקוף שר ולהסתובב כך חופשי. כאשר ראש הממשלה עושה דברים כאלה חמורים, אני חושב שבהחלט אפשר לעשות מעשים חמורים נגדו.
A few weeks later,
then he was assassinated.
The death of Rabin led to the death of the peace process. In 1996, Benjamin Netanyahu became Israeli Prime Minister for the first time. And what he set about doing was the creation of a whole new generation of far-right extremist political leaders in Israel. They included people who have now served under him as cabinet ministers, such as Naftali Bennett, Gideon Sa'ar, Ayelet Shahid, and Avigdor Lieberman. All these people came to prominence and matured politically under Netanyahu's wing of the Likud party. And they all went on to form their own far-right political parties and movements. Despite constant scandal, Netanyahu has been re-elected prime minister on 6 occasions. In 2023...
Yeah, that's why it's always funny when liberal Zionists are like, no, you don't understand. We have a lot of political discourse in this country, and we hate Netanyahu too. And it's like, bitch, you hate Netanyahu, you keep voting for him. What do you mean you hate Netanyahu? Also, the final proof that you actually don't hate Netanyahu was when the ICC came after him. When the ICC came after Netanyahu, we all found out what the liberal Zionists actually thought about Benjamin Netanyahu. All the way from Yair Lapid to every single person who was like run against him, who have either inevitably capitulated to him or has still continued to run against them and failed time and time again. Every single one in lockstep was like, F the ICC. What happened?
Netanyahu presides over the most right-wing Israeli government in history. Einstein was a Zionist. He was supportive of the creation of the State of Israel. But he was, as he expressed in that New York Times letter, deeply concerned about the sort of country that Israel could.
Einstein's sentiments today would declare him to be an anti-Zionist, for the record. Like, to say that Einstein was a Zionist in that regard is, I think, missing the forest for the trees, because his understanding was that, like, yeah, there should be a state there where Palestinians and, the Arabs and Palestinians and the Jews can live side by side with the same exact rights. Like, his perspective on this was literally identical to mine, pretty much. And you know how people feel about my opinion on Israel.
Become. And it was up to its leaders as to whether it was going to become a democratic, tolerant nation, or whether it was going to descend into dark fascism and totalitarianism. Israel is at best a partial democracy, but Jewish Israelis do have full democratic rights within the State of Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu's overhaul of the justice system, of which he describes himself as a victim, will fatally undermine even that democracy in Israel. Justice Minister Levin proposes curbing the powers of the judiciary, including allowing members of parliament to enact laws that the High Court has struck down. This will allow parliament to pass unconstitutional legislation. Levin also laid out a law that would empower the country's 120-person Knesset to override Supreme Court decisions with a simple majority of 61 votes.
יש לזה כל מיני שמות. שמות לצורת שלטון כזו. דמוקרטיה זה לא אחד מהשמות האלה. זו אגדה שמה שהם...
This is why I said, Mr. Opposition Leader Yair Lapid himself, Mr. Liberal Zionism right here, Mr. Center Left. You know what this moderate man who's talking a big game here about how much he despises Benjamin Netanyahu. He hates him. He hates him so much. Yeah, he was chirping big time at the ICC.
עשו פה עכשיו זה מלחמה באקטיביזם השיפוטי. מה שהם עשו פה עכשיו זה לבטל את המערכת הדמוקרטית הישראלית.
The obvious thought that arises is whether Israel's decades of illegal practices against the Palestinian people are now coming home to roost. Whether Netanyahu and the country's most right-wing government in its history are taking the sum total of those.
This is actually obviously such a pre-October 7 video, so it's pretty funny to see. But this is something that I covered during the anti-Netanyahu protests that were happening in Israel, that the greater problem always will be the apartheid. And all of the Israeli flag-bearing anti-government protests that took place refused to acknowledge that. It is because of the apartheid that the Israeli government gets to do whatever the they want to. Okay? It is precisely that violence that they utilize to enact their agenda of further and further right-wing suppression. So if you like your gay shit in Israel, if you're like, oh man, I love Tel Aviv, it's a gaycation destination, whatever the fuck, right? Recognize that the maintenance of this apartheid will inevitably take your rights away too.
Decades of oppression, brutality, and illegality, and starting to apply it to Israel's own partial democracy. And it reminds me that my old friend Archbishop Tutu spoke in the South African and the
What a flex.
Israeli context of how oppression not only destroys the oppressed, but it corrodes and ultimately destroys the oppressor too.
Part of my own concern for what is happening there is in fact not what is happening to the Palestinians, but it is what the Israelis are doing to themselves. I mean, when you go to those checkpoints and you see these young soldiers behaving abominably badly, they are not aware that when you carry out dehumanizing policies, whether you like it or not, those policies dehumanize the perpetrator.
Stop saying poor Israelis, bro. This Desmond Tutu, first of all, are you insane? And two, I've said this exact same thing. It's important to understand. No, that's not a super lib take. You guys are, bro, chatters are chirping at Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Who the f do you think you are? What do you mean, bro? Lib take, they say. Who the f do you think you are? Because you watched a couple memes online that you're the most radical person? Know your goddamn place, dude. He's quoting Fanon, whatever. It's also something that I say as well. It's literally just like, it's objective fact. Phantom tax, yeah. It's true. It goes, it's the exact same perspective for every instance. It's the same for white supremacy in America. That level of hatred inevitably ends up dehumanizing you, okay?
I'm Jewish. I'm the son of a Holocaust survivor who survived the war in Vienna, hidden in a cellar for 3.5 years. She lost dozens of her own family at Auschwitz and Theresienstadt, and I grew up very much with the knowledge of the real consequences of racism. In addition to which, as a South African committed to non-racism in the country of apartheid, I became very involved with the ANC from quite a young age when it was still a banned and illegal organization. I then landed up serving as an ANC member of parliament under Nelson Mandela. I was invited to speak at Auschwitz by the Auschwitz Institute, and I introduced...
I'm trying to be like, lib take. What has this guy done?
introduced the first ever motion in the history of the South African Parliament on the Holocaust. As the son of a Holocaust survivor, as someone who was born in a racist apartheid state and struggled against that state, my actions are driven by my Judaism, of which I am incredibly proud. For that to be encapsulated in
Another Hamas guy. By the way, there are people who will say this dude is anti-Semitic. I know. You want to know what's you want to know what's funny about that though? More often than not, the people that will just chirp about that dude being anti-Semitic are literally not even Jews, okay? More often than not, it is going to be some random Redditor that got it in his mind that, like, you know, we have to defend Israel unconditionally, and is just repeating shit that they've heard from other people that they see as the foremost authority. This does not mean that there aren't Jewish Zionists who will openly say some of the most unhinged shit, okay? There are. It's just that it's the likes of Brianna Wu that parrot this idiotic take half the time.
the actions of a 70-plus-year-old state that doesn't represent me is appalling and abhorrent. If my family history of genocide has taught me anything, if my years struggling against apartheid in South Africa taught me anything, it is to always speak out in the face of injustice, regardless of who that injustice is committed by and who it is committed against. And today, we have a responsibility to call the state of Israel as it is becoming, a fascist state. Given the importance of global conversation.
God, I love Double Down News so much. Double Down News is just like, Double Down News is one of those outlets that have always been phenomenal. And it really makes me remember, you know, there are good British people out there. Okay? When I hear the British accent, I mustn't automatically cringe. However, now that I showed you the best that England has to offer, Andrew Feinstein is South African. Isn't he literally in England right now? Double Down News is, guys, stop saying he's South African, okay? No, he's also British as well. Where is he? Which almost immediate abandonment of many 10 progressive pledges. Starmer's gone too far. Andrew Feinstein is literally campaigning in the UK against Keir Starmer. It doesn't get more. I know he's South African. We already talked about his background. Like, I know. He openly mentioned it. He said, my friend, Desmond Tutu. He was literally, he worked alongside Nelson Mandela. Of course he's South African. He said he's South African. Doesn't mean that he's like, he's not also British as well. Anyway, why are we talking about this? Double Down News is a British institution and it's very good. Okay, goddamn. I can't even say something nice about British people without everybody chirping, dude. Goddamn. That's why he's allowed to run for MP, because South Africa is a Commonwealth nation. Okay, Double Down News is British. You taught us Britain bad. Yeah, obviously, when I talk about England, or when I talk about Iowa, or when I talk about Idaho, or when I talk about California, I don't mean every single person is bad. God damn. Jeremy Corbyn is probably one of my favorite politicians, okay? And he has his issues too. But like, I like Corbyn more than I like Bernie Sanders. Give me a goddamn break. He's British. Shut the fuck up. I like Mick Lynch. He's British. H. Bomber guy's British. Sean is British. Plenty of Brits that I like. The Walk Back. Oh, shut up.